Smart aesthetic, branding, marketing, entrepreneurship.
Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. I'm so excited to have my sister on the other side of the world, my good friend, Lauren, back on the podcast. Welcome back.
Thank you. Hey, girl. Hey.
Hey, girl. Hey. You and I have had such great conversations in the last few months, and you have really been stepping up your game. Not that you weren't before, but with the photography side of things. And so I really want to spend today just like chit-chatting about travel photography. But for anyone who doesn't know you yet, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and who you help?
Yes. So my name is Lauren Carey, and I guess people might know me as Girl Gone Abroad. I always feel so cheesy when I say that. I am based in Amsterdam, but I'm a travel creator, content creator, and photographer. And I help hotels, businesses in the travel space, restaurants, basically hospitality industries have beautiful imagery to help promote their businesses.
Love it, love it, love it. And that's not what you always did. We actually met a long time ago now. How long is it? 2017 is how many years ago?
Too many.
Too many. And if you guys remember the last episode when Lauren was on, Lauren was actually my roommate in Costa Rica. Can you believe I was 23? We were there.
No, actually.
Wow. So that's the math. It's 7 years ago. Holy shit. But
okay.
I remember like networking on the Wi-Fi tribe, like was it Slack at the time? The Slack channel.
Mm-hmm.
And people were looking for roommates. And I found your Instagram and you had 11,000 followers. And I thought you were the coolest person I ever met. I was like, oh my God, my roommate is going to be Instagram famous.
Oh, how your perspective on that changed.
No. Tell us about kind of when you and I finally crossed paths. You've been traveling for way longer than me. So I was definitely like picking your brain. Where did you go? Where did you stay? What did you like? Take us back 7 years ago, kind of where you were at.
Oh gosh, 7 years ago. I've been out of the States for almost 10. So that was actually only a couple of years into the journey. And the first 2 years were spent in Bangkok. Did my little teaching abroad in Thailand getaway. And then Costa Rica was the start. Yeah, it was the start of my full-time nomad life. And back then I was just posting on Instagram for shits and giggles because I liked it. It was never the intention to take that into, I don't know. I hate the word influencer, but I was never doing it to be a content creator. In 2017, was that even a thing? Were people like, yeah, I'm a content creator? Because I don't think they were.
I think it was just blogger. I think the terminology was just blogger and like you had to have a blog. And I remember I asked you like, oh, so how many views do you get on your blog? And you're like, I don't have one.
No, I did have one. I definitely
didn't have the brand. I don't think you had the branding. Was that it?
No, I didn't have the branding because Michelle made my logo in the backseat of a vehicle driving through Costa Rica, which I still use to this day and love. No, I had the blog, didn't have any branding.
That's right. Mm-hmm. I remember working on that and I was like, well, can you please let me try it? Like, really pretty please, can I help you?
Yeah.
And that story is so funny because I think we only knew each other for like 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that story is so funny because every time I look at it, I love telling people like, yeah, we designed it in the back of a car, like driving up to a volcano.
On like the worst roads I've ever been on in my life. So yeah.
We're back. Okay, so we're designing logos. We're in the back of the cab. We're in Costa Rica. After Costa Rica, where do you kind of go from there? How does this nomad journey continue?
Oh, you had to ask me that. Where the heck did I go after Costa Rica? I think around South America for a bit, no? Uh-huh. Like, do you remember my travel life more than I do?
Well, because you were coming from not Colombia, but Ecuador. And then you were doing Costa Rica. And then after Costa Rica, you were going to go to Mexico?
Maybe. I know I did Mexico City, but where I went after that, never been to Nicaragua. I honestly don't remember. This is how I use my Instagram. It's like a chronicle of my travels because otherwise I have no idea where the heck I've been.
Ditto. Because if I take a photo of it, I remember it. If I don't take a photo of it, it didn't exist. It never happened. So, okay, let's go back to that then. Have you always been interested in photography? Was that an interest to you before you started traveling? Was it something that you started to pick up? Because knowing your way around a camera, I think is one of the harder things to do because I never took a photography class ever in my life. And so I get very intimidated by the lenses and the ISO and the f-stop and all that stuff. Talk to us about the technical side of photography.
Yeah, photography is something that goes back to literally childhood and disposable cameras. And I tell people I was like running around my backyard taking pictures of trees and trails and absolutely nothing. So I don't know where it came from, but Have always loved it. I actually took a black and white photography class when I was in high school and learned how to manually develop film in a darkroom, which I wish that was something I could regularly do in my life, because what a zen thing to hole away in a darkroom for an hour and just like make beautiful photos. But I got my first DSLR in, let's say, 2012, and just learn as you go, like YouTube University, never took any formal classes, just experimented, figured it all out on my own. I think, yeah, it can be really intimidating. Like, what the heck is ISO? How does an f-stop work? Like, you just literally play around with the numbers until what you're looking at looks good. And with digital cameras, that's so easy. It's an instant reflection of what you just took. But yeah, literally my advice is just to hop on YouTube and just Google how things work. You don't need to take any formal classes.
Same, YouTube University, like fine arts and art history major, did not learn graphic design in school. Like, took one class that had a 2-week section on Illustrator, and I hated it. And I hated it so much that I didn't want to go into the computer lab, that Cassie gave me like a jailbroken version that her uncle got her to put on her laptop so that we didn't have to go into the computer lab to do the homework, because I hated it that much, which is just hilarious like 10 years later. But okay, so you've got the photography kind of under your belt. That's always been an interest. You start posting on Instagram. When do you feel like you started like really start seeing traction on your Instagram with like reposts? Was it because of stories? Did stories exist? Yeah, they did in 2017. I think they did, because I was taking the stuff over from Snapchat. Remember? I was like taking the Snapchat videos and then putting them on my Instagram story because I liked the Snapchat filters.
Yeah, you probably had cat ears.
So at what point do you feel like, okay, I really like this and maybe I could start getting some, trades out of this? When did that pick up for you?
I mean, ironically, it was with you in Cape Town. I got my first barter deal with a hotel in Cape Town and hit 10,000 followers. And I think that number might be in a lot of people's brains, where you're like, once I hit 10K, like I can start charging, can start getting more deals. I don't think that's actually true, by the way. Micro influencing is alive and well. But in my head, 10K was like, oh yeah, I've made it. And so from then on, I started getting hotel deals.
Yeah. And I think it's because back then 10K meant that you got to get a swipe up link.
That is true.
Because once you had the swipe up, then you could start sharing your affiliate link and you could start making money. So funny to think about how much Instagram has changed since then. And then you and I have stayed in touch because every time I come to Europe, practically, you and I are hanging out with each other. And we have stories on stories on stories. But we'll spare you the details for the podcast because I want this to be something that people can really walk away from and understand. And when we were having the conversation, even before the show, I was thinking like, okay, who are the people that I know that could learn something from you? And a lot of our work now is with like luxury Airbnbs, with hospitality, with real estate, and photography is everything for these industries. And it really does make or break even just like an Airbnb listing, right? So you've stayed in a lot of Airbnbs in your time. Do you remember like ones that stick out? Let's go for the ones that stick out, and maybe you can give your little synopsis of some of your favorites.
I think my favorites are honestly mostly recent ones, and I think that comes with having a higher following and getting better deals. But there's one that I stayed in France over the summer, and people probably know this because it was super famous on like, Condé Nast and Travel and Leisure. I think it's been rated one of the best Airbnbs. It's on all these compilation lists, but it's called La Miette, and it's this old poet's house, and it kind of is on a corner of this old village. And just aesthetically from the outside, it's stunning. It's covered in green ivy and flowers, depending on the season. And there's cats walking around. It's just chef's kiss perfection. But what I didn't realize was how stunning the interior is, because people weren't showing that on Instagram. So when I got there, I was all about taking a tour of the inside and actually showcasing what's in the interior. But it's straight out of a magazine. Absolutely stunning. I photographed the shit out of that place.
Posts like that for properties that are really unique, what I've found at least, is like, it's not always that the property is in like the best location. Did you find that to be the case with this one?
This one was a bit difficult to get to. I remember having to, if you don't have a car, which I didn't have a car when in France, I think I had to take a bus to get there. But as long as your property is honestly just super aesthetic and Instagrammable, like people will come. It does not have to be super central. It does not even have to be convenient. But this one, I was able to book a single Tuesday night because it was booked out forever and ever. And it just happened to become available because they had a really flex cancellation possible. I was just stalking their
Nice.
Airbnb page.
Okay, so then when you're looking on Airbnb, being someone who's stayed in hundreds of them, what are you looking for in a property? Are you finding your research first through Instagram or Reels, or are you finding them natively in Airbnb?
Both. And people ask me that often. They're like, how do you find these places? I'm like, honestly, just spending way too much time on Instagram. I think most of the places I find through Instagram. I keep a dream destinations list within my Instagram. So I just save all these posts. But there are times it's my favorite thing is finding beautiful places to stay. So I will scour Airbnb. And these days they have kind of different categories that you can click. So it says, I'm pretty sure a category is unique stays. So I've been able to find, even here in the Netherlands, like a windmill. You can go stay in a 3-bedroom windmill. And I just enjoy seeing kind of what's around in this unique category.
Okay, so let's go back to that first thought. You're scrolling through Instagram, you're saving things into your dream folder. What constitutes a photo that you would want to save? You're like, I don't care where this place is. I'm going there. This looks incredible.
I mean, typically things that I've just never seen before that I know I can't find anywhere else. So another one of the properties that I visited in 2023 was in Copenhagen, also super famous. Most people would know it if they saw a photo, but it's called Manonle Suites. And the whole interior is a pool, and it looks like it's in Bali, actually. It's just a jungle. It looks like a Jennifer Lopez Waiting for Tonight, like music video, you know? And that was some place that I'd never seen anything like it. And I wanted to be the one to capture that interior. Even though I've seen a million pictures of it before, I just had to go.
So when you were cruising that Instagram, let's say you're coming across an Instagram of a property you've not stayed at before, but you're interested. How much time are you spending like in the feed versus on stories versus tags? Because I feel like I have my own process for this, but I'm curious what yours is. Like, how much time are you doing a deep dive on it?
Like, do I intentionally go to Instagram looking for properties?
Yeah. Or are you finding them on your explore page? Are you seeing them because somebody else tagged them? But when you do click over to like a property profile, what are some of the things that like grab your attention right away? Because I'll give you an example. So for me, for example, when I'm looking at like a boutique hotel or an Airbnb property I want to stay at, I'm looking for like, do they have a lot of photos of all the different types of rooms? And do they have photos of the amenities? Because usually that feed will be like nice, professional, beautiful photos. The issue is sometimes you go to the tagged photos and it looks nothing like the actual property. And then you're like, wait a second. So either you paid a really good photographer or there's something to hide here. But it's always a great sign when they have a ton of tagged photos and they look consistent to the rest of the feed, because then you know that their audience like cares about those little details and those aesthetics. And then I love seeing as well, like their stories highlights. Like, do they have events? Do they have things going on? Do they have promos? Like, what brands do they work with? Do they have stories that are active? Like, who's there right now? Like, that's all stuff that I pay attention to, but maybe I'm a freak for that.
I mean, I'm not going to say you're a freak for that, but I definitely don't. Especially I put no stock in how other people photograph a place, because
Okay.
even if you go on Google and research a place, 9 times out of 10, the photos that you see are absolutely terrible. So I take everything with a grain of salt, and I'm like, I know that this has potential, and it's all about the photographer and kind of your eye and what you see. The general public can't take photos. So the stuff that you find on Google are terrible, or tagged photos even are generally terrible. So I'm only paying attention to the main feed. And I'm not really paying attention to their stories so much either. It's just, if I get fixated by one single room, I will travel for one single spot.
Okay. So like Window to the Duomo, for example.
Precisely.
Okay.
And
tell us that story.
Literally did exactly that. So the owner of Window to the Duomo is actually a good friend of mine now because of this experience, but she found me on Instagram. I think I was in Italy already. She was like, hey, if you'd like to come by and take some shots at my apartment, then, you know, you're welcome to. And I literally hopped on a train and was like, see ya in a couple of days. And for people that don't know, Window to the Duomo is an apartment in the center of Florence, and it has the most surreal view of the Duomo, perfectly framed in this giant window. You can sit in it and have the Duomo view behind you, but it was a storage closet that she found on Craigslist and renovated into this beautiful artist studio for solo travelers. Unfortunately, it's not for rent anymore, or like not on Airbnb anymore. but she has other properties in the building. I just stayed in one a couple of weeks ago called Antilux, and that one is actually arguably better because it has the same window views out of multiple bedrooms, and it has a corner balcony that's right in front of the Duomo. It's honestly doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, pretty freaking insane. And the videos and the clips that you were able to share, I feel like really tell that story. I know you have kind of a bit of a process when you're going to photograph a property, especially an Airbnb property. Talk us through your general, like, okay, I'm arriving, it's 3 p.m. in the afternoon. What next? Like, how do you start to plot out what you know you want to capture, or do you kind of just like let the property kind of speak to you a little bit?
Okay, so if I walk into a property and it happens to be 3 p.m., I am in a race against light because rule number one, touch nothing. If I walk into a property, all of my belongings are immediately going into a closet or completely out of sight. The first thing I'm going to do is pull out my iPhone and take a tour of everything pristine and clean with good light. So I'm running through and getting a full property tour, and then probably just smaller individual clips of rooms or just small details that I like that I can later splice into a reel. Once my video is out of the way, then my camera comes into play because I refuse to post anything I've taken on my iPhone. So we're working with a Sony A7R III, great quality camera. I'm photographing every single room, empty, pristine. Again, because if I'm staying there for even 2 nights or 3 nights and I mess that place up, I'm never going to get it back to that like freshly clean state. I mean, I can make a bed.
A hair tie on the side table and a bottle of water and a tissue in the trash. And it's like, that stuff is so annoying to fix afterwards. It's stuff you don't notice that you're like, gosh, dang it, this is still in my shot. So I get that completely.
Yeah, absolutely. And then after you've kind of captured the whole place in its best condition, then I'll start to think more about kind of the lifestyle shots and more detailed things, because I can clean a room or a corner or, just a certain piece of the property to shoot, I don't know, me in bed with a newspaper and a bug, or like if there's outdoor space, that's generally pretty easy to do, but I save all of the lifestyle stuff for later when it's not so important that everything be perfect.
Yeah. And I think you do a good job as well of kind of like telling a story of this day. Once you've got a sense for the view and the way that the light changes, like I'm thinking about your super iconic, like the pyramids in Egypt with the birds flying over, which was such a happy coincidence that happened and you were able to capture it. But how often are you like looking for the shot versus just like happen to just like stumble upon it?
I guess it's a mix. I'll typically make a shot list. Once I've seen the place and I know what's what, I will write out so that I don't miss anything, because I get really upset if I've left a property and I did not get the shot that I wanted. But then something like what you're explaining was just serendipitous, and this flock of birds is literally back and forth zigzagging across the pyramids, like unreal. But the beauty of staying in a property for a few days, like when I stayed at this place in Florence, I was able to determine at what exact time the light looked best. So it took me 3 or 4 days to know, oh, this room is perfect at 2 p.m. So it's really hard when you do one night stays to actually get quality content, because you check in at 3, 4, then your light's gone. You're checking out at, 10, 11 noon the next morning, and you barely have time. So it definitely takes a couple of days to get all of the right lighting, all the right angles, and to actually really, I think, capture a property at its best.
Okay, so if you own a property and you're looking to bring someone like you into the property to photograph it and give you social media content, you're saying like minimum 3 to 4 nights stay?
Yeah. And personally, yeah. I mean, it can be done, but you're not going to get the best content. You're not going to get certain spaces in their best light. It takes a bit of time to kind of figure that out.
Okay, so that's a good rule of thumb. One of the things that comes to mind, or the examples that comes to mind in that one, is this photo of you eating pizza, drinking wine in Matera, which you went to just after my 30th birthday trip. And let's talk for a second about how many shots you're able to pull off as a solo traveler, because I'm sure you get comments like, who took this? How did you set this up? Like, what are you using? Talk us through kind of your setup for a scene like that feels so candid, feels so editorial, feels so natural, but there's a lot of planning that goes into that. And was the pizza cold? Because that's what I want to know.
Yes, the pizza was freezing, because that shoot probably took me like, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes if I'm being on the Well, that would be on the fast side, but I do get asked all the time who took your photos, or people question me. They're like, "You're not solo traveling because somebody filmed that stuff." And I had to explain to someone the other day. I was like, in 1820 they invented this thing called the tripod. You'll notice all of my clips are static. If it's moving behind me, somebody took that, but just use your brain. So with my solo shots, I'll always have a tripod, and with my Sony camera, I'm able to connect it to my phone. So there's a Wi-Fi connection. I can see the preview of the frame in the app and then hide it when need be. So you can do one of two things: put it on a timer, or there's something called interval shooting, which is a bit tricky from a focus perspective. It can really struggle to focus, but you can set on your camera how many shots you want it to take. Do you want it every 1 second, every 2 seconds, every 5 seconds? And you can also set how long until it starts shooting. So if I'm trying to shoot myself, I don't know, 20 feet away, I'll give myself a 20-second start before it starts shooting. And that way you can try different poses, a lot of movement, and then pick ultimately the one that you like best, which is what I did with this pizza shot. And just, yeah, trying to be candid and doing natural things. And one of them's going to look good if you take at least 20.
Right. No, you have to have options. And I think that's the misconception is like, oh, you just captured the perfect shot. And it's like, no, there was a whole mental pre-production. Then it's shooting multiple frames. And you have this great reel where you're like running back to get your tripod, which is so funny. Like like little, I want to put like the little Wii game, video game music to it or something. And then you have post production, which I've sat next to you when you're sitting there editing a photo, and there is not a single pixel out of place. Like, you are so meticulously organized about like your editing style and making sure things look that fit your aesthetic. But also, I think you're always looking for it to show you what you remember it feeling like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Talk to us about what your tools are in your like tech stack for post production. Like, what are the things that you know you're going to clean up out of a shot every single time?
I think when it comes to, well, framing, the first thing that comes to mind, I'm very symmetrically obsessed. So I like everything to be extremely centered. It drives me crazy when it's not. And I think if I'm in the photo, I typically like to be centered as well. And I think if you ran through my feed, that would shine through. So composing things to be very central, rule of thirds, everything just has to be just so. But I don't do a ton of cleaning up. I think I try not to alter my pictures too much. I just have a consistency about how I edit. I like certain tones. I have a warmth, I think, to my photos. And also I put a flat tone curve. So it has this kind of almost like a matte finish. And once you get your style down, like, I could just close my eyes and edit. I've got it down to a T. It's super quick for me now. But people have been telling me lately, because I've started doing photo shoots in Amsterdam, that they're drawn to the warmth of my photos, that it doesn't look like everybody else's, and that unique style is an advantage. And I actually really appreciated that.
I think they're spot on. Because I look at my iPhone photos of Amsterdam and they all look gray and dreary and gross. And then I look at your photos and I'm like, how the heck are you capturing all these twinkly little lights and this like warm glow and all of these attributes that, like, that's how I felt when I was there, but my photos aren't showing me that. By contrast, I feel like Italy photographs beautifully.
Yes.
So let's give a minute for the 30th birthday house, because that place was a photographer's dream, with the lighting,
Epic.
with the castle, with the everything. What were kind of your first impressions walking into Aquamarini and like just getting the sense for the place?
Literal jaw dropped. Like, I had seen pictures of this place, prior to you hosting us, and I had no idea that it was going to be as beautiful as it was in person. Because as soon as you come down these stairs and you're walking on the walkway to the main doorway, you're confronted with the most incredible view. There's a little kind of seating area outdoors, and I guess it's kind of like a pergola, right? That perfectly frames the Ischia castle. And it looks like a painting, honestly. I couldn't put down my camera when I was there.
It was the best. And the vibes were just like warm and summery and beautiful. And I'm literally probably going to post a reel about it today, because just like that, to me, that place was also such a risk, because I booked it. It had 2 reviews on Airbnb. 2. And the photos were beautiful. And I was like, what's wrong? I was like, how's it gonna go? And my sister, to her credit, encouraged me. She's like, just book it. She goes, even if it's terrible, you're in fucking Italy. Like, you'll be fine. And I was like, okay, good point. And I was between that place and another property. And thank goodness I booked that one, because that to me was like the perfect amount of beautiful, but still chill. Stuff was walkable. It was not too far. But I loved, what I really, really loved about that house is it felt like things were intentionally left for you to find and discover, right? Like all those stacks of vintage magazines. Like I'm kicking myself that I didn't take a picture of every single advertisement from these like 1987 Vogue and Casa Vogue and Architectural Digest magazines, because how often are we like looking for inspiration on the internet when there's a whole world that existed before the internet to draw inspiration from? So I love that there were like those little tiny touches of things that felt like you were in a home without feeling like you were in someone's personal home. And I feel like that's something that like Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton and St. Regis, like you're in a hotel room. It's beautiful, but you're not getting the like tattered pages of a book or the plates that like feel like they were maybe someone's grandmother's. Like that stuff to me, like makes me so happy. And I think it does to you too, because you notice these details.
Oh, 100%. I think books and magazines are two of my favorite things to find in a space. It does make it feel like, yeah, more of a home as opposed to like a sterile environment that has absolutely no accessories or details in it. But also, like Danella's place in Florence, she goes to the antique markets and decorates the whole place with little bits and bobs. And this one particular place used to be a dentist's office. So she has this one little corner with like antique dentistry items to like take that old story and tie it to the new place.
Do you have pictures of the dentistry stuff? Because I need to send it to Dental Hygiene Nation.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you send those to me after this? She's going to die when she hears this, because we're literally building. Okay. You don't know this, but we're building a like capsule collection around this idea of like this dark academia look and like vintage dentistry, like old school, super, super old school dentistry. So if you have like photos of Italian dental implements, like, hello.
If I remember correctly, I mean, there was like old signage and then I think little like vials and bottles and things and possibly some books.
Okay, I need to see it. Yeah. I need to see it, because I literally was showing her your Instagram being like, this is kind of the look we're going for, right? Is that rich, textured, historical, like you said, like bits and baubles, like kind of, my brain goes to like Little Mermaid when she has her like collection of all of her doodads, right? Like each of them kind of has a story and they're like coming from somewhere. And even if you don't know the whole story, just like looking at things that aren't mass produced by IKEA is so refreshing. Don't you feel?
Absolutely. Just like give a place some character and add little details that don't exist anywhere. And that just gives it its own little story. That to me is just magical and super fun to photograph.
How do you pull that storytelling through beyond visuals? Obviously, you've got the photography down, you've got the Instagram stories down. You also love to write juicy captions and like really paint a picture for someone. How important and how much time do you think you spend like really crafting the story part of it?
I mean, obviously it varies with the place. Some of these Airbnbs that I've mentioned, like the one in France, La Miette, that one I could write probably a novel about. In fact, someday I think I will write a novel and I'm going to include details about that stay because I was there during a full blood moon and you could see it out the windows of this Airbnb, just like taking up the whole sky, no lights on, moonlight just like filtering the living room. It was, surreal really doesn't do it justice. But I just love telling the stories of different moments or experiences that I've had in the place, or if the place is unique enough and has a good enough story on its own, crafting up something about that, because people probably book stays more for the story than anything, or at least anything that's like relatable and interesting certainly helps with the presence of a property, I think.
Okay, I have 2 book suggestions for you. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
One is fiction and one is nonfiction. The fiction one is the one that you took the picture with the cover on my birthday. That was Perfect Vintage by Chelsea Fagan.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally right here behind me on my table. That story is fictionalized about a woman who moves to help rehabilitate an old family villa to become like a rental space, like a property that you could stay at, like a boutique hotel. And basically it's her entering into this family dynamic, multi-generational family, she gets swept up in a romance. And the whole story talks about properties the way that you and I talk about properties, where it's like every single detail and the wall coverings and the flooring was like this and the pool and the gravel and the shrubs. So like the imagery, I think, first of all, you're going to love that book because I know you love romance as well. And this one is a steamy one, which is also fun. So that's the first book because I think I could totally see you writing a book because you have incredible source material. So that helps. And because you pay attention to this kind of stuff. So for me, this makes all the sense in the world. And I just first have to ask if you'll let me design the cover of whatever the book is. Because if it's going to be photograph or if it's going to be illustration, like sign me up.
Illustration, absolutely.
Great. The second book I want you to read, or at least look into, is called Unreasonable Hospitality. Have you heard of this one?
No.
It's a great book. It's about the restaurant, and I'm going to fudge the name because I forget it every time. I believe the restaurant was called 11. It was in Manhattan, and it was there in the 90s and 2000s, and they were super, super famous for having incredible customer service. And not customer service in the like taking care of everyone's needs, but anticipating what someone would want without them having to ask. So like, this is what I kind of call like the Target dollar section approach. Is like, I don't really need any of the junk in the dollar section, but somehow they're showing me exactly what I want. And I didn't even think that I wanted a little jar that was in this shape and this color, right? Or whatever, right? But it's kind of they know you so well before you even get there. And the famous example in the book is that the manager trained all the wait staff to eavesdrop, like listen in on the conversations, pay attention to the conversation. And one of the waiters walked by a table that they were serving, and it was a family. And they said, we had such a great trip in New York. Everything was amazing, this and that. And they're reminiscing. And somebody goes, yeah, but we never got a New York City hot dog. We never got a hot dog. So this waiter goes downstairs to the hot dog vendor, gets a hot dog, brings it up to the kitchen, plates it, brings it up to the family and says, you can't leave New York without having a hot dog. That kind of stuff, right? So good because it's about anticipating and being ahead of what someone could even think that they could ask for. But it's like the paying attention to the details part. I know you've probably stayed at places that have given you that type of feeling, either hosts or property managers or whatever. What could you sum up or even share maybe as an example, if one comes to mind, of a time where someone made you feel super, super welcomed?
Okay. I've come across some absolutely amazing hosts, but when you say that, what comes to mind is where I went after your birthday, to Matera. And if people don't know what Matera is, Google it immediately. I think the latest James Bond film was done there. And also Passion of the Christ was filmed there, but I've never seen anything like it. So I booked this place, I think on just like booking.com, an apartment, and it was actually a 3-bedroom apartment by myself, which was a little bit excessive and ridiculous. But, my host was this incredibly kind man. He didn't live on the property, but he was around every day just to like see if I needed anything, to just sit down and have life chats. Took me to have coffee one morning, helped set up a tour of the town for me as like a content creator barter deal, picked me up from the train station even and brought me back, just like above and beyond. And if anybody wants to assume anything, like this happens to everyone because I read the reviews and everybody was raving about this human and just how kind he was and how out of his way he would go for everybody. And that made that stay. The stay would have been incredible on its own, but that just took it to like the nth degree. I will never forget that, and 1,000% would go back.
Yeah. And now we're here telling the story, right? So like all of that, like his kindness to you is now getting reciprocated in people that are going to go search and want to stay at his place just to experience something like that, right? And it was beautiful. Yeah. I remember seeing the pictures, like, wasn't there like a yellow bathroom or something that I was losing my mind about? Or
it was pink. It was like straight up Barbie pink.
Love. But some like the color wash, super eye-catching, like super beautiful, super unique, like you're saying. But same thing from my birthday trip. The hosts learned that it was my birthday and the homeowner sent me a painting from the local artist of the island. And it's like hanging right now in my kitchen, like I can see it. And every time I see it, it's like, first of all, it's gorgeous and totally my style, which is a slam dunk. But even if it weren't, like we cherish things that people gift us so much more than things that are mass produced, right? It's just like a fact of being human. And I think that those little tokens of like unreasonable hospitality. Like, nope, you didn't have to do that. Like, I was just staying here with my friends, but it makes us remember things. And especially when it relates to travel, it's just so special and extra,
1,000% agree.
Ugh, I could talk about travel stuff forever. But you and I could both. If someone wants to work with you and they've heard this whole episode and they're like, I need Lauren to come to my space and photograph it and capture it in all its glory, how would they go about doing that?
I mean, there's a million ways to contact people these days, aren't there? But email girlgoneabroadblog@gmail.com or through Instagram DMs. I'm always looking at my DMs. So Girl Gone Abroad, and will travel for beautiful places.
Yes, she is for a hire, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll hopefully be meeting up together this summer and creating some content together. So I'm really excited for that. Of course.
Literally cannot wait.
The best photos I've ever had taken of me, you took of me. Like they were
Thank you.
there was a point in time where like my dating app profile was like 100% Lauren Carey photography. Because there's that one in Costa Rica where I was like, wow, I don't think I've ever looked hotter in my entire life. And you know which one I'm talking about too.
Black bathing suit. I know exactly
Black
what you mean.
bathing suit, in the ocean, water spray, like casual, like, oh, I just look like this all the time, like kind of photo. And it was so good. But then I also think of the ones in Portugal as well.
Mm-hmm.
Orange bathing suit, striped button down hat. And I'm like, damn, girl, you know what you're doing. So yeah, if anybody needs a confidence boost, book with Lauren.
Whenever I go on WhatsApp, all of my friends, their profile photos on WhatsApp, like most of the time are pictures that I've taken. And it's just such a nice feeling.
Perfect. Honestly, Lauren, like I think that's a whole new vertical for you is like confidence boost solo travel photo shoot females. Let me get you like at your most independent, your most alive, your most like just like a woman of the world vibe, like slam dunk.
I'm into it.
Lovely. Well, thanks so much all the way from Amsterdam this morning.
Thanks for having me.
We made it work.
Yeah.
Love it. Thanks so much. And thanks for listening, guys. If you love this episode, please go follow Lauren at Girl Gone Abroad. Tag us if you loved what we talked about, and reach out and work with her. She'd love to get to know you. Yeah. Thanks. Bye.